Hey everybody, today we're talking about triangle sum word problems. Now, word problems tend to be a student's worst nightmare. Don't let them be. There's nothing different mathematically in these problems than what we've already been doing. The only thing that's different is that they're writing it down in word form instead of in number form. So, I'm going to give you a couple of tips as to how we can break down the problem to make it easier for us to work with. First of all, let's read the problem. The whole thing. All of it. Including what we're working with. We're working with triangle sum word problems. Now, if somebody on the street was asking you about some sort of problem, you might have to think about it for a couple of seconds and figure out, okay, what exactly are they talking about? What tools do I need to use to solve this problem? But we're fortunate enough to know exactly what type of problems we're working with and what tool we need to use to solve it. We're working with triangle sum, so we should be using the triangle sum theorem for these problems. Okay, the next thing that we should do is let's read through the problem all the way through and figure out what information is useful to us. You might want to grab a highlighter or start underlining, whatever you need to do to make your information a little bit clearer to yourself. So let's read through it. This problem says, in a triangle, one angle is 3 times the size of the smallest angle, while the third angle is 2 degrees less than 10 times the size of the smallest angle. Find all 3 angle measures. Well, there's a couple of things that have been kind of interesting that have been mentioned here. They mention the smallest angle twice, but they don't tell us what it is. They also mention at the very beginning a triangle. Now, they wouldn't specifically tell us that we're working with a triangle if we needed a square or a circle. We clearly need a triangle. In my workspace, I don't have any triangles. So let's make one. Some of you might be thinking, well, what does that triangle look like? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. We're going to be filling in information regardless of what the triangle looks like. It doesn't have to be drawn perfectly to scale. All we know is that it's a triangle, which is what I have. It's a triangle. All right. So this piece of information says that one angle, so we know that we're talking about angles in particular, is 3 times the size of the smallest angle. Ah, that smallest angle popped up again. While the third angle is 2 degrees less than 10 times the size of the smallest angle. Now, it doesn't tell us the size of the smallest angle, but that's not really a problem. Because if we don't know in math what something is, we can very easily just put down a variable for it. So we don't know the smallest angle, or where it's located for that matter, so let's just pick an angle, and let's just throw in a variable for it. This is our smallest angle. Let's just call it x for right now. Going back to our info, it says that one angle is 3 times the size of the smallest. Well, 3 times is literally multiplication. So how do I show something being 3 times the smallest? I just multiply the smallest by 3. In other words, 3x degrees. And again, we see something very similar. This one says, while the third angle is 2 degrees less than 10 times the size of the smallest. Well, 10 times the smallest would be 10x. But what about this 2 degrees less than? Well, let's think of a different problem for a second. If you went and bought 10 oranges, and you ended up with 3 less by the end of the day, it's because you've eaten 3 of those oranges, or you've subtracted away 3. So when we see less, we should be thinking minus whatever. Here they're saying 2 degrees less, so that would be minus 2. So that is showing us 2 degrees less than 10 times the size of the smallest angle, which is exactly what they asked us for. Lastly, it says find all 3 angle measures. Well, I'm going to underline that a little bit differently because this is my directions for the problem. This is really what I'm trying to solve here. Alright, well, in order to do that, I need to know what the smallest one is, and then I can start multiplying to figure out the other two. So, I'm working with triangle sum word problems, and I notice that I have angles inside of a triangle. So right away, from these two pieces of information, I should start thinking, alright, these three things should add to 180 degrees. So let's do that. These are all three angles being added up to 180 degrees. Let's combine like terms. 1x, 3x, and 10x is 14x. Minus 2 equals 180. We haven't used that info yet. Let's let's add 2 to both sides. That leaves us with 14x equals 182. And if we divide both sides by 14, we're going to get x equals 13. Now that's not the answer. The question here is to find all three angle measures. This is only the smallest angle measure. What we need to do now is substitute the value of x in for each of these two angles to figure out what these ones are worth. That's easy enough to do. 3 times 13 is going to give us 39 degrees. And 10 times 13 minus 2 is really 130 minus 2, which is equal to 128 degrees. Now these are all of my angles, and this is answering the question. But they asked us with words, so we should really answer with words too. It doesn't have to be a lot. We can just state the angle measures are 13 degrees, 39 degrees, and 128 degrees. So we've given them words explaining our answer because they asked us in words for our question. Okay, not really that bad. It's just taking the time to figure out exactly what they're asking us. So here's a problem that you can try on your own. Maybe write this one down on a piece of paper and then practice underlining and figuring out what information you need. Pause the video, try this one on your own, and then resume the video and we'll discuss it. Okay, so let's see how you did. In a triangle, I know I'm working with a triangle. One angle is 4 times the size of the smallest angle. 4 times the size of the smallest angle. And the largest angle is 5 times the size of the smallest angle. I want to find all three angle measures. So we take the time to figure out what pieces of information are really, really important to us here. First of all, in a triangle. Again, I don't know what that triangle looks like. It's just a triangle. So here's a triangle. Then it tells us that we have to have something 4 times the size of the smallest angle, and then over here 5 times the size of the smallest angle. So it's that idea of not knowing what that angle's value is. That doesn't matter. We're trying to figure that out. So let's just call it x for right now. When we go back up here, 4 times the size of the smallest, that's just 4 times x, because x is our smallest. So we have 4x degrees. Here, the angle is 5 times the size of the smallest angle. So if the smallest is x, then something that's 5 times the size would be 5x. We need to find all three angle measures. In order to do that, we've got to figure out this one. So we've got to solve for x, and then we can substitute the value in to find the rest. And again, we know what we're working on. We're working on triangle sum word problems. We also should be able to look at the picture and figure out, okay, well, these are angles, and I know that all of the angles should add to 180. So let's do exactly that. 1x plus 4x plus 5x equals 10x. So 10x equals 180. To get rid of that 10, we can divide on both sides by 10. That's going to leave us with 18. Again, this is what they're asking us, to find all three angle measures. All we've done so far is found one angle measure. So let's just substitute in 18 for x here, so 4 times 18 is going to give us 72 degrees. And here we'll substitute 18 in for x. 5 times 18 gives us 90 degrees. Now, if the triangle itself is that important for looks, I mean, we know that this should be a right angle. That's clearly not a right angle, but we were still able to figure out the measures of all of them. So the look of the triangle really didn't matter. So don't be afraid in these problems to just draw any triangle. All right? And lastly, let's just write down our solutions in words. The angle measures are 18 degrees, 72 degrees, and 90 degrees. Okay? If you take your time, figure out what they're asking you, figure out the information that's really useful, draw yourself a picture, and be sure that you're answering the question that they're really asking you, you'll have no problems with these. Practice. There's a worksheet that you can look at if you haven't already completed it that's got some good word problems on it. You can go on Google and type in triangle sum word problems. They should have answers with them so you can check your work. Okay? But the only way for you to get better at these is to really sit down, try them, underline, draw pictures, practice. I'll see you soon.